Good evening. Welcome to the October 7th Village Board Legislative Session. This meeting is called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. Madam Clerk, do you want to start us off with attendance?
Trustee Fritchie?
Present.
Trustee Lopez? Trustee Levin?
Here.
Trustee Quesada?
Present.
Mayor Garrity?
Present.
Okay.
Mayor's and trustees announcements?
I think we have to do the public hearing first, or are you switching the order?
No, you are right. Absolutely. Please. So then we have a public hearing on proposed local law number 7. Corporation Counsel, would you like to give us a little overview on what we're going to be having the public hearing on this evening?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor, members of the board. This local law, which has been long in germination, is with regard to our wetlands. It is basically a complete overhaul of the freshwater wetlands ordinance that we currently have in our code. My thanks to Land Use Council, to Village Consulting Engineers Kellard Sessions, and to Director of Planning Jaime Martinez for helping to bring this along. But it puts the village in line with its neighboring jurisdictions and many other jurisdictions in Westchester to have a wetlands ordinance regarding the protection of the wetlands, watercourses, and the buffer areas. With that, we can open up the public hearing.
Thank you very much, Stuart.
Sure.
I'm not seeing people in the room to comment. We have had the benefit of feedback from a number of individuals and entities in the weeks leading up to this, because we have been noticing that this public hearing would be happening. So thank you to everybody who weighed in. We do have a number of attendees virtually, and so I'm looking at that list right now. If you are an attendee and you would like to comment on local law number 7, please virtually raise your hand. And what do we do for somebody who's a phone number? Is there a way to know if they are interested in speaking? We just, all right, okay. Oh, we do have 2 hands that have been raised. Yep. Okay. So I will welcome.
You see the notes on the Q&A, is that?
I will take a look at that in a moment. Right now I'm going to invite Daniel Patrick to speak, and I'm clicking the allow to talk. So Daniel Patrick, you probably need to unmute yourself, and then you are welcome to comment on local law number 7.
All right. Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
All right. Thank you. My name is Daniel Patrick. I am from the law firm Cuddy and Fader. I am here on behalf of Birchbrook Manor, the owner of 81-89 South Highland Avenue. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to summarize some of the points that we highlighted in our letter that we submitted on September 15th. First of all, I just want to state that Birchbrook Manor does not oppose the adoption of a wetlands ordinance and understands the importance of protecting the village's natural resources. However, Birchbrook Manor believes that the ordinance as drafted may pose undue burdens on certain landowners and the community. By way of background, Birchbrook Manor is a local family-owned management company currently run by the 2nd generation of the Kapoor family. Birchbrook Manor and the Kapoor family have owned the premises for over 3 decades. The Kapoor family recently began making significant reinvestments into the property, including various upgrades to improve property conditions, promote energy efficiency, and enhance sustainability of the property. These reinvestments included the proposal to subdivide the property and construct 5 new townhouse-style residences on the newly formed eastern portion of the property with frontage on Wolden Road. To date, Birchbrook Manor has reinvested over 16 months and $225,000 in this project alone. This time and money has helped the Kapoors secure site plan and preliminary subdivision approval from the Planning Board earlier this year in February, area variance approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals, and Board of Architectural Review approval. The only remaining step in this entitlements process for Birchbrook Manor is to obtain approval from the Westchester County Health Department, which Birchbrook Manor is currently working towards and hopes to have that approval soon, but has been subject to significant delays due to COVID-19. Birchbrook Manor will then return to the planning board for final subdivision approval. The review up to this point of the project has included a thorough evaluation of the proposed development's potential environmental impacts by the village's boards, staff, and consultants. This includes an in-depth review of any effects on the existing wetlands and water courses at or adjacent to the premises. The planning board's final site plan review and preliminary subdivision plat approval resolution in fact concludes that no work would be taking place in either the stream or the wetlands. The building footprint and limit of disturbance for the proposed project are not within the streams or wetlands. In addition, the board is satisfied that any impacts, if any, will be minimal. And again, that is from the planning board's final site plan and preliminary subdivision plat approval resolution from earlier this year. Despite this prior extensive review and this finding of no adverse impacts, the proposed wetlands ordinance that is before this board this evening could require Birchbrook Manor to undergo a duplicate review of these wetlands impacts due to the project's location partially within the proposed wetlands buffer. This could result in additional expenses and unnecessary delays to the applicant. The proposed section 149-12 would exempt projects which previously were granted final subdivision approval, though Birchbrook Manor is requesting that this language be modified to exempt projects with preliminary subdivision approval. These revisions are appropriate for several reasons. First, exempting projects with preliminary subdivision approval will still achieve the desired preservation and protection of wetlands and waterways while not imposing undue burdens on the previously approved projects. As indicated above, the village's land use project subjects applicants to an extensive environmental review prior to granting any preliminary subdivision approval. The preliminary subdivision approval is also the stage during which the secret review takes place by the planning board. Thus, any potential impacts to wetlands are fully evaluated during the preliminary subdivision approval stage. Additionally, section 149-7B, subsection 2 of the proposed ordinance acknowledges that the appropriate time for reviewing an applicant's wetlands impacts is concurrently with the public hearing on preliminary subdivision approval. Finally, by requiring a project like Birchbrook Manors to revert back for additional wetlands review, the village could be causing a detriment to landowners and the community. This detriment would come in the form of not only unnecessary time and expenses for the applicants, but also possibly deterring future investment and development within the village. For these reasons, Birchbrook Manor requests that the village amend the proposed wetlands ordinance to exempt projects which have already achieved site plan approval and preliminary subdivision approval rather than final subdivision approval. Doing so will not interfere with the village's goals of preserving and protecting the wetlands. Rather, these changes will only ensure that no landowners or the community are adversely impacted. So those are our comments. I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you for hearing us.
Thank you very much for your comments. Generally, with a public hearing, we welcome people to speak and we just listen. In this case, at some point I will ask, there were a number of questions that were raised there that it'd be helpful if our planner could respond to us later in the week, but I don't think now is necessarily the time for us to engage in that discussion. Is that okay?
Absolutely, understood, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I do want to clarify also, we got a question in the Q&A of when would be an appropriate time to comment on one of the resolutions. I believe item L is what Mr. Fry has his hand raised for. Mr. Fry, if you've raised your hand for item L, then go ahead and put your hand down, because there is an opportunity after we do public announcements, after we do board and trustee and administrative reports, where we will ask for people to have up to 4 minutes to speak about any and all resolutions on the agenda for tonight. So if that's what you've got your hand raised for, then we will call on you at that appropriate time. So I will move on to Mr. Timothy Foley. Thank you for confirming, Mark Fry. So Mr. Timothy Foley, I will unmute you, allow you to speak, and you can unmute yourself, assuming that you wanted to talk about the wetlands legislation.
I did indeed. Can you hear me?
I can. You're a little bit quiet, though.
Okay, I'll try and be a little louder. So good evening, I'm Tim Foley, and I'm here to share some comments on the Wetlands Ordinance on behalf of the Building and Realty Institute, a trade association representing home builders, remodelers, and multifamily apartment building owners, many of them in the village. Our understanding is that under the current code, the village primarily regulates activity within the appropriate buffer zone for wetlands that have been identified on the state map. In addition to the state designated wetlands, the EAC has been called upon in the past to provide input on what should be determined to be a wetland within the boundaries of the local waterfront revitalization plan. With this understanding of current code and practices, we feel that the broad changes within the ordinance would potentially create some problems with developers who will in the future seek to build homes on small lots within the village, and would definitely create some problems for current homeowners who might be looking at renovation or better utilization of their existing property at any time in the future. This is because of three factors. One, the proposed ordinance creates a 100-foot buffer for wetlands and check zones throughout the village with no variance whatsoever based on existing density or zoning. Some of the zones within Ossining are single-family lots with a lot of space, while others approach near urban density, but the same buffers would apply throughout. Two, according to some of the comments provided by the planning board, the number of existing homes and homeowners who might be affected is substantial, suggesting that a more targeted approach should be in order. Over 700 homes would clearly be in a regulated zone, and another 600 are in the check zone, where activities that the homeowner might want to take to improve his or her property may now of a sudden be a regulated activity requiring a permit. Taken together, that represents 25% of the existing housing stock in the village, which seems quite high. And finally, we are concerned that even if the village intends to add this level of burden to existing homeowners, that the process outlined for the check zones in particular is somewhat backwards. Those 600 homes within the check zone where the borders on the map are too imprecise currently to determine whether a wetland buffer does indeed overlap with the property or not, would place the onus for investigation of this question on the applicant. And that's an inefficient arrangement, both for the applicants and for the village. Under the proposed ordinance, a homeowner with an idea in mind for a project and who has begun to do preliminary due diligence to determine whether a wetlands permit was required has to weigh the uncertainty of what they might find if they were abutting a check zone. If they determine a 100-foot buffer to protect a previously unclear wetlands is required, some number of those projects may opt to either go ahead with an additional round of redesigning their projects to accommodate that buffer, or to abandon their project altogether and kiss goodbye whatever costs they've already sunk into their preliminary planning. But neither of those expenses in that scenario needed to happen at all. It could have been designed correctly the first time, or no planning at all needed to happen if the homeowner already knew that their property included a true wetlands buffer that would make such an arrangement impractical. If the reverse scenario were true, if the EAC or some other entity was required to investigate these areas where the village is currently uncertain whether a buffer zone ought to be established to determine if there was a wetlands there to protect, homeowners could plan with certainty from the get-go rather than rolling the dice with potential uncertainty. We hope you will consider these factors and ultimately agree that this ordinance perhaps needs some further thought and some fine-tuning to minimize unnecessary and unintended burdens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Foley. We do have one other person who would like to speak, and then once we've heard from everyone, I do want to open it up to if any board or staff want to just comment or correct anything that might be misunderstood, just to clear the conversation. So right now, Mr. Fry, let me see, you can unmute yourself and you may speak.
Good evening. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you just fine. You're welcome to speak about the proposed wetlands legislation.
Yes, indeed. First of all, I'd like to commend the board on proposing a wetlands protection law. I think in general, it's important to our environment that the wetlands, which are a source of enormous biodiversity, are adequately protected. but I'm a professional planner, and I've run into this issue in other municipalities. And I agree very much with Daniel Patrick of Cuddy and Fader, all of his comments regarding the applicability of this proposed law to an application that already has preliminary subdivision approval. I think it's a basic question of ex post facto, but I think if someone has gone that far in the process, I think that it's only suitable if they already have a preliminary subdivision approval in hand, that it's frankly too late to impose additional concerns. Now, in the future, if someone doesn't have a preliminary subdivision already in hand, then in that event, they can deal with the wetland issues in a timely manner before they receive their preliminary subdivision approval. I would also like to completely support and parrot the comments of the previous speaker, immediately previous, because he brings up another concern, which is that of homeowners, maybe a quarter of the homeowners in Ossining who are currently in compliance with all laws and could be made to be out of compliance should they intend to do anything. Now, obviously, if they're doing nothing whatsoever on their property, they don't have to comply with any law. However, if they innocently decide they'd like an addition, as lots of people do, they might find not so much an issue with a wetland, a rivulet, vernal spring, anything like that on their property, which should be protected. But they might find that there's an issue with this buffer zone. So I think that it would be wise for the board to review this proposal and do some fine tuning to be sure that there aren't unintended consequences. In the town of Ossining on North State Road, Artist Senior Living built a Alzheimer's care facility quite recently. I don't even know if it's finished. In the course of that approval, with which I was not involved, I saw the plans and I found that the wetland, there was a rivulet of water coming off a constructed berm in the property. That was then delineated as a wetland. No real problem so far. It was only a foot wide. But the buffer, the 100-foot buffer on the wetland, created an enormous complication for that particular project. So I think it's important that the board consider a balancing test. We certainly want to be a little more developer friendly on the one hand, but we want to protect the wetlands on the other hand. And I think with some revisions to this proposed draft law, that if you address, first of all, the considerations that have been raised tonight, I think that will go a long way toward passing a law that all of the citizens of Ossining can be happy with, and that will also protect our precious wetlands. So thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fry. All right. I'm looking to see if there's anybody else who is looking to comment. I don't see anybody's hand raised. So as I said, this is at a public hearing. It's our opportunity to hear from the public. It's not necessarily the time when we have back and forth, but if there's any comments that my colleagues on the board or our friends and staff, particularly our planner or our corporation counsel, have been so instrumental in helping guide us through this process. If there's anything that people would like to comment on or any corrections that you'd like to make, I would open it up for that. Oh, do we have another hand raised? Yes, we do. Thank you for taking note of that, Annie. All right, so hold your comments. We have Mr. Chris Bellaveri. You can now unmute yourself.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you just fine. Welcome.
Hi there. My name is Chris Bellaveri. I work for Riverkeeper, which is a nonprofit organization that is located inside the village of Ossining. I'm familiar with the wetland laws of a number of states, and I have to admit that when I first moved to New York, I was a little surprised at how New York's laws work on that front. And I just wanted to take a moment and commend the village for recognizing the gap that exists in New York state law and to protecting its wetlands. And I also just wanted to say that I did look through the law, and although there are areas where I think it could go further, but it was well thought out, and the people who drew up the law were clearly trying to strike the right balance. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bellaveri, and thank you to Riverkeeper. You were, when I mentioned at the start that we got some feedback from entities in the community, Riverkeeper gave us some very thoughtful feedback that we took into consideration and got feedback from, had reviewed by our own staff. So we really do appreciate when Riverkeeper weighs in and helps us share their thoughts. And so we have, not surprisingly, some questions from developers and builders that are different than some of the feedback from Riverkeeper. So I see, Jaime, that you have unmuted yourself. So I welcome you to comment.
Just two quick comments. So the concern that was raised by Dan Patrick is the same concern that was raised in the letter that he sent the board that this board received. And so, obviously it was looked at, discussed. I don't think that they're, it's up to the board if the board did want to specifically exclude final plats. That's a decision I think that the board would have to affirmatively make at this point. Other than that, of course, we can make that change. It's not a problem. It would essentially affect their project only. And the language of the text, correct me if I'm wrong, Stuart, was to basically, if it was any project that had come to final approvals, was not going to be affected by this, and any that didn't come to final approvals.
That is correct. You're correct, Tommy.
Rather than parsing out any individual projects of what stage of finality they might be in. The other point I think is to kind of follow up with what Chris Bellaveri said. There were certainly ways that this could have gone much more heavily in regulating, and could have gone less in regulating, and there was a lot of time and consideration that went into trying to strike a fair balance for, in particular, 1 and 2 family homeowners that would want to come and do small additions to their property, do small work to their properties, that process would be simple and not cumbersome. So while, I respect the opinion that was posed by Mr. Foley, I don't believe that this ordinance was crafted in such a way that it's going to prevent people from moving forward with doing projects on their property. I think there was a lot of time and effort put forward to make sure that didn't happen. But that would be my only comment.
Thank you. That certainly, echoes the conversations that we have had. Would anybody else like to comment on the wetlands legislation? Then eventually we have to. Oh yeah, please go right ahead, Manny. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. No, this is very helpful, and thank you, Jaime, for bringing adding the map to the whole conversation. I think that actually paints a different picture, or more puts more in perspective of what the crafting of the law was. And as when we got that email and going over this, I just want to make sure that there's a lot of single family zones, the 2-family zones that they're pretty much as I stated before. So I do have questions about that, and I'm probably going to talk to you, Jaime, in more detail offline, because my concern is, like you mentioned, that when a homeowner goes in front of the planning board, or maybe they didn't have to go in front of the planning board or get a wetland permit, I would like to get like a simple example or samples of what the steps to follow. So I want to make sure that is on a black and white application. If you're doing a deck, these are the steps that you need to follow. If you're doing an addition, these are the steps that you need to follow when you are within the wetlands buffer itself. So, but again, I know we're not going to be closing the public hearing, I believe, tonight. But that's something that I would like to have a deeper discussion with you, Jaime, to understand this better, and for me to be able to support this whole legislation 100%.
Manny just brought, oh, go ahead, Jaime.
No, I say absolutely. That's not a problem at all.
Manny just brought up the question of what do we do next if we're going to close the public hearing or not. It sounds like Manny is, Trustee Quesada is an advocate for keeping it open. Do people have comments more broadly or specifically about keeping this open or closing the public hearing tonight?
I briefly read, I think you're referring because we received an email that asked that we keep it open. That wasn't my intention coming in here tonight. My intention was to, can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I can't hear myself, so. My intention was actually to close it, but we can discuss amongst my colleagues of why we would keep it open. That's fine. I just wanted to say that oftentimes people keep referring to two comments. One, that we are here to protect the wetlands. We're here to protect our community. We're also here, the wetlands is part of the community and a part of the way, especially communities that are sitting near the Hudson River should be looking. And we are not the first to be doing it in this area. We're actually almost on the back end. It's been in the 90s when most of our neighbors had already instituted, including the town of Ossining. We're one of the last ones to be doing this. Not a surprise to anybody who does development. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. I thoroughly appreciate the amount of work that members of our staff and attorney went through, especially with regards to single family, two family, and all of the smaller homeowners, that there shouldn't be a surprise. But again, it's only affecting those that do want to do some work, and there is a process for that. So it's really more about the community of which the environment is part of, is a big piece of the conversation. I do want to remind the public, the EAC was mentioned. In fact, it is the EAC that had some issues in their ability to really be considerate of how we deal with the environment. And when I say the environment, I mean somebody building something who throws their stuff over to their neighbor's property. It's not just about the overall environment. It's literally the environment. What kind of material does a builder use? Where are things discarded? All sorts of traffic patterns, all sorts of things is what is meant by environment. It was actually the EAC, which is a volunteer group of members of our community who live throughout our community, who thoughtfully asked for this and thoughtfully did their homework and work with staff on it. So just wanted the public to be, whoever's following this, to be aware of it. I'm very grateful for all the people that have had input into it during this sessions. And I'm ready actually to close the public hearing, but I saw the email and I did not get a chance, and I apologize, I was driving, to really read through the details. I can catch up on it now, but I'm certainly open personally to hear of why we might not close the public session tonight.
I had not seen the email that was referenced. Thank you for bringing it up because it came in just about an hour and a half before we came on the air. So I took a quick look at it, and it was, I'm going to out the person who sent it if he's okay with that. It was from our corporation counsel. I would be deferential to the advice of our attorney to hold off on closing the public hearing for now. It sounds like there are some tweaks and updates that should be done. And ideally, when people have the opportunity to have a public hearing, they get to see what we believe is the final version. And unless, of course, there then would be an additional version if there were concerns that were raised by the public that we then incorporated. But from our end, if our attorney is saying that we should make some minor adjustments before voting on it, regardless of anything that we hear from anybody, I think we should do, put forward the, and as he pointed out, unless there was some cause for a tremendous sense of urgency, that we should put forward the what we consider to be the final draft version, and that will be ready. We could then keep this open until 2 weeks from now. Right, Stuart?
That would be correct, Mayor. It could be kept open through the 21st, and then the board could vote on the legislation on November the 4th. I just want to, it's important because, as I mentioned, the final bill must be before all the members of the board 10 calendar days before the vote. And with the tweaks and the changes we have to make that I've mentioned to Jaime and other staff, that would really give us just basically until Saturday to do that. If we were to make it for the 21st, this way it gives us a little bit more time to make sure it's an absolutely clean piece of legislation, and we would have that there. So that's the reason that that's just being requested that way.
Well, I'm comfortable with following with your recommendation, although I certainly do understand the eagerness of my colleagues to want to move this forward, because in our minds, we've been working on this for a very long time. Because of COVID, everything was really delayed. And part of the reason why we wanted to have these hybrid meetings was to make sure that anybody who wanted to comment, whether they were able to do it virtually or at home, had the opportunity to do that. So we've been sort of sitting on this as one of the important pieces of legislation. We're eager to move forward, but I'm comfortable with waiting 2 more weeks, unless I know Rika would like to move forward. I'd like to get a sense of the board of a motion to hold it open through the 21st.
I have no problem with that, being to give them time to do the tweaks. My question is to my colleague, Trustee Casada, is other than the email, is there other reasons that you feel this should stay open? No, you're muted.
Not at all. I think we have all the tools. We have spent a lot of the hours. Staff has done all the work. In my end, we can ready. I'll go with Rika. We're ready to vote on this. But again, I still want to make sure that clarifications are done in my end in regards to the smaller homeowners. The 1 and 2 family homeowners that want to do some sort of renovations. Some of the stuff that we do put on the books regarding to laws, sometimes we look at the bigger picture, but we don't see how much will that affect until something is in front of the planning board or architectural review board. So I want to make sure we are, we are taking care of all those minor details. So I'll feel comfortable waiting 2 more weeks. And then in the meantime, I'll talk to Jaime. He'll explain that to me. I'll make sure, because I'm sure there's some revisions to the applications that go in front of the planning board or zoning board or even the building department. They have to be modified. So I would like to kind of see what that look like and how we're going to be implementing that going forward, even in the online process as well. So, and just I guess quick question, Jaime, this map that you have provided, that's going to be part of our website as well. Sure, it's going to be a permanent map there.
Yeah. So the map is called to be updated every year. So at once a year, the Board of Trustees would want to certify that the map is up to date and correct. So we could go through with the county, make sure all the data is up to date. It'll be available on the website. Right now we're doing everything virtually, and that's going to stay the way for some time, I would imagine. So yes, that map would be online. If this was passed, it would also go into the system that we have now. So if somebody wanted to submit a permit, we would know whether they were in a check zone or they were in an area with a buffer zone, and depending on the type of application that they had in front of them, if it was a simple building permit application, then they would probably go an administrative permit, and it was the type of thing that rose to the level of a site plan review, where it would normally go from the planning board, then they would have a different level of review for the wetlands permit.
Thank you. So all the municipalities, as you know, if I go to the GIS to Westchester County or their local municipalities GIS, that if I click the wetlands buffer, that is part of the map itself. So is that what you're telling me is going to be included in our GIS system as well?
So I'm not sure, 100% about the county's version. I know the county does have a wetlands layer. There's 3 different wetlands layers. There's the soil survey for hydric soils. There's the NWI, and then there's the DEC. The NWI is National Wetland Inventory, and DEC is, of course, the Department of Environmental Conservation. Those layers are available, but they're not buffers. The buffers are different for different places. So some municipalities obviously have 100-foot buffers for wetlands and have 100-foot buffers for water courses. We have proposed a 100-foot buffer for wetlands, but only a 50-foot buffer for water courses. So I could speak to the county to see if they were willing to host the wetlands regulation law and put it on our website, but I would also have a PDF of a map similar to the one that you have in front of you that is the official map that we would be using. And those layers can be transferred to any GIS system. So if an architect, for instance, called and said, hey, can I get a copy of your buffer? We could leave a copy of the GIS shapefile on the website so they could just pull it straight from there. So that'd be helpful for, you know, an architect or developer who wanted to do their own analysis leading into it. Ultimately, you know, if you're a homeowner, it's one level of thing because you're probably doing something that's an administrative review. If you're a developer and you're trying to build, you know, new buildings, you're going to have to delineate those wetlands, and that's a different level of review. And that's the kind of thing that would go in front of the site plan review. But we can make all that stuff available on the website.
Okay. We can go on the GIS in the county, but I'll talk to you offline on that one. But yes, thank you.
Very good. If there are no more comments from my colleagues on the board, I think we're looking to entertain a motion. Do we need to make a motion to hold the public hearing open through the 21st of October, Stuart?
Please.
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Terrific. I muted myself, didn't I? Thank you. In the middle of my speaking. So I believe I'm looking at the clerk in case I've forgotten something. Is it now time for mayors and trustees announcements? Very good, thank you. Trustee Lopez, I know you have some exciting things to update us on. Please go right ahead.
I certainly do, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Great to see you in person, online, as always. So I have two topics that I want to discuss tonight. The first is the census, and the second is the DPW site. So with the census, I have some good news and I have some bad news. Okay. So the good news is that in terms of the raw numbers that we have here in the village, we are looking strong. So if you compare how we did to the 2000 census, to the 2010 census, and today, we're doing much better. So in 2000, we had 63% response rate. In 2010, it was 64.7. And now for 2020, so far, we have 65.9. That's incredible. We're knocking on the door of 66. And that's great. That means that every 10 years, the number has gone up. That's certainly the direction that we want it to go. That's the good news. The bad news is that there has been a lot of back and forth between the Trump administration and the state governments and the census in order to figure out what the census date is going to be. So originally, the end of the census was going to be at the end of August, but because of the pandemic, of course, there was a extended deadline from August 15th to October 31st. Since then, there's been a back and forth between the Commerce Department, essentially representing the administration, trying to get it originally to the end of September. And now, just today, we got news that a three-panel judge has allowed for it to continue through the 31st of this month. So there are two things that we need to keep in mind. Number one, how much time do we have to count? As of right now, as I speak, we have until October 31st. But if the Commerce Department asks the Supreme Court for a stay, and if the Supreme Court grants that stay, then that would end the census count. That wouldn't be good. So keep an eye on that. I certainly will, and we'll keep you updated. The second is, once the counting is finished, usually you need somewhere in the order of at least 4 months in order to do the data processing that is required to make sure that the data quality and accuracy is as high as possible. As of right now, the deadline is December 31st to the end of the year. So that, if you're counting, that would give you, if you're ending at the end of October, November, and December, that will give you 2 months to do at least 4 months worth of work. Now, the Census Bureau, they've asked to have until spring of 2021 to do this work, and the president has denied it. And so This is incredibly important for all the reasons that we've discussed over all of these many months of the importance of the census. Census numbers go into determining the representation in Congress, which is one of the biggest pieces on the table right now. But it's also the location of highways and schools, of hospitals, of housing, police and fire stations. All of these things are influenced by the census. And so it's really confusing for the community because we've been going back saying, you have one more week, wait, you have one more month, and it's confusing how much time we have. So know that right now, we have until the end of October. Please, through phone, we have phone numbers in many languages, and around the village, you'll see signs for the numbers in English and in Spanish. You can do it online. You can do it through the mail. There are many ways to get counted, and it's super important for all the reasons that I mentioned. The last thing that I will say is that it's, once again, super important to say that your immigration status does not matter with respect to the census. Every single person must be counted irrespective of immigration status. That is number one. Number two is with the DPW site. For those that have been following along, there is a village-owned property near the river where the Department of Public Works has been essentially dumping leaves for many, many years. And we have been partnering with Wilder Balter partners in order to develop that into a mixed-use, mixed-income development. We're now at the point in the process where next week there will be a sign up in that place right along the fence, both in English and in Spanish, that explains what kind of project is going to go up there with information. If you have questions, there will be an email address, there will be a website, and there will also, I guess that's the second part, there's going to be a website that everybody can view that has information on the process, that has pictures. There's going to be constantly updated. And so really excited about the development of the website for the DPW site. You'll also start to hear about the kind of public, not necessarily public hearings, but opportunities for public comment that are going to exist. Right now, Wilder Balter Partners is working with the village in order to gather as many stakeholders as possible, from the schools all the way on down, of what is the information that we need about the kind of impact this will have on our community, so that we all have the most accurate data possible. So that is where we are with the DPW site. That is where we are with the census. A lot going on in the village of Ossining. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Trustee Lopez. Trustee Levin, do you have some comments or announcements
Yes, it
for
is
us
this
today?
side of the room. A quick good evening, everybody. Apparently my iPhone doesn't recognize me with the mask on. A reminder that October 24th is the beginning of early voting this year. I don't know if the mayor was planning to speak about it. I'm sure she will. Our community center is a fabulous place to vote. It worked out really well at the last time I was in there to vote, so I really strongly recommend that we start voting soon and in a powerful way. No matter who you're voting for, please vote. Just a couple of places to go if you need to find out. If you haven't received something in the mail, many of you should have received these black and white cards that tell you about early voting and locations and time, etc. Both English and Spanish. If you haven't received, westchestergov.com, a great site for information. Also, the League of Women Voters has a fabulous website where you can look up all of your information. I like to go to Vote 411 because I think they have some really succinct and precise information and links to everything you need to know about voting. So those are just, or you can just Google where do I vote near me. So I'm really encouraging everybody to go out and vote from whoever you please, but please do vote. Additionally, one of the community members recently sent something to me, and which I thought that I would share. It was an interesting perspective, I would say, and I want to share that perspective with you because we're going through a lot of tough times, and it's always the elephant in the room whenever I come to these meetings, when I think about legislation and what public officials should be doing. And one of the things that was shared with me is that we do recognize that well over 200,000 people, Americans, have died from this pandemic, obviously a much larger number worldwide. I thought it was interesting that this person, who happens to be a World War II veteran, a Vietnam War veteran, had sent me some statistics. I'm going to share it with you because I found it somewhat of an anchor to what has been going on in this country in less than 9 months. That number of Americans who have died under COVID is far greater than the total number of the following wars. World War I, Vietnam War, Korean War, War of 1812, the Mexican-American War, the Spanish-American War, the Gulf War, and the Twin Tower terror attack equals far less than the total number of people that have died already. People who do not have monuments built for them, no parades are happening for them. I find it a thorough disgrace of so many institutions in our government that have allowed this to happen. Not a political statement at any particular person, but I think it's an institutional failure to our people that we have had more deaths in less than a year of this many Americans. God help us if we actually outstrip also the number of Americans that died when we include World War II and the Civil War. It actually brought tears to my eyes when this vet sent this to me, who lives in this community. So I just want to put a perspective on what we're going through. And if that doesn't make you go out and vote, I don't know what will. And we do need to look at policies as we go through the next few months of things that will help this community rebound from this pandemic that's affected us and really the whole country. So that's sort of my reflection on something that a community member sent to me. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you for that, Trustee Levin. Trustee Quesada, you had an update about something to do with the comprehensive plan?
I'm not hearing him.
Can you hear me now? All right, good. Verizon, I think they're going on. I was actually hoping that I was waiting for Omar to mention this, but I guess you kind of slipped that one from
I gotta
yours.
leave something for you, Trustee Quesada.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Omar. So October 20th, 7:30. We've been working on the comp plan for several months now. It's been very active, a lot of feedback from our members and some feedback from the public. But now the public is going to get the chance to actually, get the opportunity to actually tell us, what they think and what their opinions are in all the chapters that we've been going through. So if you would like to participate on this, again, there's going to be a Zoom meeting. It's a public meeting. It's October 20, starts at 7:30. If you were to go to our website, there's a link in there where you'll find all that information and all the documents that we're going to be talking about on this particular meeting. So please, just like the census, we do this every 10 years. The last one was done in 2009. So we are a little bit overdue in regards to what we should be updating and what is our Ossining going to look like in 10 years from now. So I urge you, please, to go into our website, Village website, take a look at the documents, take a look at the date, and take a look at the link for our next meeting that, again, is going to be October 20 at 7:30. So please be there. We'd like to hear from you as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Quesada. You're good, or do you have something?
No, I just, Omar reminded me, the developer, Wilder Bolter, is, I believe the date they're shooting for is October 24th to do a public kind of viewing or meeting actually on the site. It was discussed the other day at our update meeting, and they're looking to do a tent and some renderings and we all thought it was a good idea because people can actually be there and look. The building's going to be there, over near there. You know, it's not just taking a guess, you know, by coming to a meeting like this and looking at pictures. I thought it was a great idea. It's not firmed up yet, but it sounded like I believe Manager DeTore, they were looking for the 24th to do this. And I think it's, you know, with a rain date, I believe, of the following day, the 25th. So I think this is a great step. I think it's a great way to do this, where people can actually be standing on the site and looking at pictures and envisioning what's going to actually happen down there. So that was my little update. Thank you.
Bob.
24th. They're planning for the 24th with a rain date of the 25th.
We'll be firming that up next week. So as soon as we have a firm date, that information will be pushed out.
Okay, thanks. So I wanted to make everybody aware, if you weren't already, that it is National Organ Donation Awareness Week. And I have this nifty mask here that was given to me yesterday from Live On New York, the foundation that Team Ossining has worked with for a number of years to raise awareness about the importance of organ donation. New York State is one of the worst per capita as far as people who are registered as organ donors. We have had some pretty significant efforts on a legislative perspective and campaigns like what we've done in Ossining for a number of years to get more people to sign up. And we've moved from the very last to the second to last in our per capita registration. So we're going in the right direction. We couldn't have been worse. We're going in the right direction, but we're going to try and get up to, you know, maybe out of the 40s when it comes to worst in per capita. And one of the things that we're doing here locally to help with that effort is we had a little, news conference, a handful of us outside yesterday. But tomorrow afternoon, in fact, our cameraman today is one of the editors for the big Zoomathon that is happening tomorrow afternoon live on Facebook. We'll be sharing it on our village page. I think it's originating on the town page. We'll share it on our village page, and any of us who want to share it elsewhere around the social media world, please do. It's hours of programming telling people about the importance and value of being an organ donor and how very easy it is. If you don't even know if you're an organ donor, if you have a driver's license, take a look at it, and if there's a little red heart on it, then you are an organ donor. And if you're not, then you can become one. And my contribution to the Zoomathon is an interview that I conducted the other night with my cousin, who is, if you were to meet him, you'd say, wow, that's a nice looking young man in his 20s who seems to be going places in the world. Good for him. But he spent the first several years of his life in and out of hospitals, having transplant surgeries and many other complications. His last surgery was when he was 8 years old, and that was 17 years ago. And it is thanks to organ donors that he was able to overcome some really, really frightening, difficult health concerns. He's very conscious of having a healthy lifestyle now and works with a team of doctors and takes medication every day. But for all intents and purposes, he leads a relatively normal and healthy life. And he is an inspiring story. And so I look forward to seeing him be part of an afternoon of programming that is helping to build awareness of the importance of being an organ donor. I also want to call to your attention, a week from Saturday, October 17th, is the Riverkeeper Sweep. The Riverkeeper Sweep is an opportunity every year. Usually it happens in the spring. Obviously this year, nothing happens when it's supposed to, but it's a big effort up and down the Hudson River to clean up the areas around the river. And there are a couple of sites here in Ossining, so I encourage you to visit riverkeeper.org to register and get all the details. And on my list was early voting, but Trustee Levin mentioned that. The one thing I will add to that, because I get this question periodically, this year, of course, is like no other. I too will be voting this weekend. I'm sorry. No. I just got a reminder of something else this weekend. I shouldn't be doing two things at once. No multitasking for me. The voting will happen, early voting here in this very room, I believe, in this building anyway, October 24th. Many people want to vote by absentee ballot, and it is very much encouraged. Some people are a little nervous about the mail, though. So there is information from the Board of Elections that I will share with you. All absentee ballots received by postal mail must be postmarked no later than November 3rd. All completed absentee ballots can be dropped off at any of these locations. That is at the Westchester Board of Elections office in White Plains. Any early voting polling site from Saturday, October 24th through Sunday, November 1st. So that's here in Ossining at the community center. This is an early voting polling site. There's, I believe, 17 in the county. We're very fortunate that one of them is right here in our downtown. So if somebody in your household voted by absentee ballot and feels more comfortable having it hand delivered here to this location, then that is an option. Or on election day, they can be delivered to any polling site. So that is, there are many, many ways to vote. We just want to make sure that everybody finds a way that works for them. Make your voting plan now. And the census, as Trustee Lopez pointed out, is, they really did make a federal case out of it, and it's going back and forth. And thank you very much for that detailed update of the trials and tribulations of having our census count. The only thing I'll add to it is, as frustrating as it is, it's great, like Trustee Lopez said, that we've surpassed the percentage of households that have been counted from 10 years ago, and even blown past what it was 20 years ago. But that still means that a third of households in Ossining are not being counted. And when it comes down to dollars and cents in our community, the census impacts so many of the resources that we receive. And in one of the most direct ways is the sales tax revenue that we get from Westchester County. Right now, we get our sales tax, our share of sales tax revenue as a Westchester Village is determined by our count from 2010, which we know was undercounted, even worse than it is this time. So we're getting a little bit better, but it's incredibly important at every level that we have as accurate a count as we possibly can. And so we're going to keep counting until the very last minute that we can. And I encourage you to do whatever you can to reach out to your circle of influence and encourage anyone you know who's not yet responded to the census to please respond today. And the thing that I got a distraction on my phone was a reminder that this weekend is the Ossining Matters 5K. And it's a different 5K or 2-mile walk than it ever has been before, because obviously in the past, it's usually this wonderful celebration of lots and lots of people ganging together onto Main Street and running and walking through the village of Ossining. So this year they've done a virtual approach. And so you can learn more about it at ossingmatters.org, and you can register to run or walk anytime between, Friday afternoon and Sunday afternoon. So there's you just have to pick the time frame there, and it's all you. And once you register online, the instructions on how you can be a participant will be spelled out for you. Jamie, you've been you're so attuned to what's going on in our community with all of the events because of your work with the Weblast. Do you have more insights you can offer to clarify this exciting opportunity for folks to contribute to our school educational foundation?
Actually, you covered it completely. So if you can't find it on their website, it will be in the Weblast tomorrow as well.
Excellent.
So people will be able to register for it.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Jamie. All right. So with that, I will turn it over to Madam Clerk.
Okay, moving along to administrative reports. Village Manager Karen DeTore.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good evening, everybody. So welcome to October and welcome to budget season. We have been busy this week starting our preliminary budget meetings, putting together the tentative budget for the board to review in November. So thank you to staff and everybody involved. We're sharpening our pencils and making sure that we're coming out with an efficient and effective budget for the board to review in the coming month. I also want to remind everybody that at the rec center, there is Wi-Fi access for students and families with students who may need it from 9 to 1 p.m. every day. So that's something that is available if you need that to catch up on your schoolwork or maybe dial into some classes. That is available here, and we hope that you take advantage of that service. On Friday, we walked the village with our parking and mobility consultants, Nelson Nygaard, and Trustee Casada joined us, and I was there with Police Chief Kevin Sylvester and his staff to talk about parking issues. Assistant Village Manager Maddie Zahach and Jaime Martinez, our planner, as well as our Director of Public Works, Paul Fraioli, were there, and we had a really good discussion, and it wasn't raining too hard, thankfully, about our municipal lots, some of our parking challenges, and we're very excited to have this project underway. We think it's going to yield a lot of good data that can be used to improve parking and help us as we look forward and work on the comprehensive plan to really help envision, and not only just envision what we want to see in Ossining, but be able to achieve it too. And last but not least, and I have two things, but on my report, Broad Avenue paving, thanks to Assemblywoman Sandy Galiff, is underway right now. So a lot of changes down on Broad Avenue. So please take a walk down there. It's looking great, and we're very, very excited and very thankful to Sandy Galiff to help us acquire the grant funding that enabled us to do that. So not only will the roads be paved, but the curb cuts are done. It's much more pedestrian friendly and handicap accessible. So thanks to Assemblywoman Galiff for that, and to our DPW staff and everybody involved in making that a much nicer roadway and intersection. But here we have, really last but not least, we have Larissa Jardine and Stephen Jardine from Bigfoot Creamery here. We're very, very excited for them to talk about their launch of Bigfoot Creamery down at Henry Gordine Park. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Stephen and Larissa, and I'd like to thank them for all the delicious ice cream this season. We were all very excited, and I know everybody got to taste some interesting, delicious flavors, and we got a lot of kudos on this. So thank you so much. It was a bright spot in our COVID summer.
Yeah, you guys you're so welcome. Yeah, it was our pleasure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think when we first started this journey a couple of years ago, we couldn't have dreamed of a more ideal location and the support of the community. It's been a real thrill, I think, and obviously with the COVID overlaying all of this, we still thought that Ossining deserved some great ice cream, and it's such a great community that we wanted to push ahead regardless. And I suppose what followed was it's been a crazy summer for us. We've been working 7 days a week, non-stop, with 2 children, 2 jobs. And really, I think we've been overwhelmed with the support of the community and such great reviews and working with such great people. So yeah, I think,
overall, it's been such a successful summer. I don't think we could have imagined a more successful summer, to be honest. I have some slides here I can take you guys through, just kind of recap at a high level, kind of the results we saw from this summer and what we want to do better next year. And then I can open it up for any questions if you guys have any. So for all of you who don't know, we're down at the waterfront, 1A Westerly Road. We're right by 3 Westerly, which was great for business. We got a lot of people coming over after dinner, which was nice, and close to the playground. So lots of children and lots of dogs. I didn't think we'd have so many dog customers, so that was interesting, and they love the ice cream. We opened July 4th and we closed end of September. And we hired 10 people in the local community to help us run the shop this summer. So I think that the thing that surprised us the most was the amount of people traveling to Bigfoot Creamery from all around. People were driving up to 30 minutes to 45 minutes to come to Ossining for this ice cream. And it just blew us away to talk to these customers and find out how they heard about us, and that they actually made the journey and the effort to come to Ossining specifically just for ice cream. And I think it's really kind of drummed up how great Ossining is and how beautiful it is and how great the waterfront is. So you'll see here, you know, people on Google search were searching for us all the way from Putnam County to Chester, which is actually across the bridge. Yeah, and a lot of people were saying how beautiful the waterfront was. They had no idea how nice Ossining was. So I really hope that people will continue to come back and explore Ossining for all that it has to offer, because we all love it so much and so dearly, and it's great just to spread the word. And the waterfront was the busiest I think anyone's ever seen it. You know, the parking lot was full of cars. On a Sunday night, you couldn't find parking anywhere. It was nuts. I couldn't believe it. You know, I would drive down there at 7:30 and I couldn't find parking. I was like, it's insane. But it was so fun. So yeah, so we served around 5,500 customers over 3 months. A lot of those were repeat customers. A lot of the repeat customers were local to Ossining. So we've made a lot of really good friends, mostly families, but also a lot of older couples and older people that like to come. Saturday and Sunday nights were our busiest, and the Chupacabra chocolate was our most popular flavor, followed by the Bilbo blueberry cheesecake and the Top Secret strawberry. Some positive feedback we got around our employees, our staff, friendly and helpful. Our people liked our funky flavors and the kind of the fun names for them. And then it was very kid friendly and dog friendly, and really, you know, the park, the waterfront, the playground really makes it accessible to everyone. So some areas for improvement for next year are more vegan and non-dairy options. I don't think we realized how many people were looking for a non-dairy ice cream. So we need to ramp up our vegan ice cream making skills for next summer. I'll be studying away this winter. Bigfoot flavors were, so initially, you know, we had decided that we were gonna make all the ice cream handmade in-house. We were selling out every day. It was just crazy. We couldn't keep up with demand. The kiosk is so small, there's only so much we can make in there. So, you know, as we think long-term, we need to think about scaling and like how we can make ice cream somewhere else to keep up with the demand. So pretty early on, we had to bring in additional ice cream to serve so that we wouldn't sell out. So we brought in Perry's, which is made in Armonk in upstate New York. And we wanted to keep it still kind of within New York State. And Perry's was a big hit too. People, you know, some people loved Perry's. They only wanted Perry's. Some people only wanted Bigfoot flavors. Some people didn't care. They wanted both. So I think we were really catering to a lot larger of a demographic by serving both Perry's and Bigfoot Creamery handmade ice cream. But yeah, just making sure that we always have Bigfoot flavors available is something that we want to strive for next year. People were asking for seating and tables outside. So something we'll explore next year is if we can put some tables or chairs out there. We'll see how that goes, and maybe some umbrellas for shade. There's really nowhere to sit in the shade down there, and it gets pretty hot. So that's some feedback we got around kind of just comfort. Right. And then people wanted us to stay open later. We were open from 12 to 8 p.m. Tuesday through Sunday. And that was pretty consistent for a good 2 months. But people wanted us to stay open till 9 p.m., especially like in the heat of the summer. So next year we'll definitely stay open later.
Yeah, we had people banging on the window while we were cleaning up. So
yeah, every night. Oh man, yeah, literally like knocking down the door for ice cream, and it was crazy. And then we were card only this summer, primarily for COVID. And just, we didn't want to have to handle a lot of cash with COVID, and especially with our employees and staff. So next year, hopefully we'll be able to accept cash. It's something that we'll explore, because a lot of people did want to pay in cash. And then some bigger ideas of things that we maybe can do next year are maybe staying open a little bit later. Some people are asked if we could stay open and do cider and donuts. You know, it was great. People didn't want us to close. They wanted us to, we were part of their lives already, and they wanted us to stay there and be with them through the fall and the winter. And so it was really nice to see that people were really going to miss us. So yeah, I mean, it'd be a great place to do hot chocolate and cider and donuts. And then a lot of people were calling me that, like, from their boats, like trying to figure out where they could dock to come get ice cream. So that was like another thing I was trying to figure out, like how to get a boat to dock to come, you know, but they figured it out. It was awesome. They came from all the way across the river. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of scale and look at there's this boating community that goes up and down the river and finds all these little hot spots to grab food or drinks. So how can we tap into that a little bit more and get more people to the Ossining waterfront through there? And then lastly, you know, really one of our bigger goals here is how we can give back to the community and be a bigger part of the community. And so just a few ways that we gave back this summer through donating gift cards to the Ossining Children's Center. We donated about 20 gift cards to families there. We sponsored the Ossining Matters Drive-In movie, and we sponsored the White Plains Police Benevolence Association. So those are just some examples of how we want to give back, and we want to continue doing that moving forward. Yeah, that's all that's all we have to share. Do you guys have any questions for us?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thanks. We're so glad to have you at the waterfront. It was really such a bright spot in a challenging year. And you know, there are a few things that that we're able to thrive during this crazy, really challenging time. And because there was really nothing else to do, I think you had this great bonus of people wanting to be in the park. They want to be in beautiful places, and it was a hot summer. So it was a really great combination of things for you, and in a otherwise trying time for the community. So thanks so much for being such a positive thing in Ossining. We're very excited for next season, and when I get to go there and just be a community member that really likes ice cream.
Well, thank you so much for your support and the support of all the team members within Ossining.
I can't think of anything not great to say about having ice cream at the Ossining waterfront. I think that's pretty perfect. Did anybody else want to say anything to our guests? They've been so patiently watching the first hour of our meeting here.
I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Your ice cream is very, very delicious. Very delicious.
Thank you. All right.
It is. I won't say how many of those 5,500 customers I was. It's more than one, and so I am certainly appreciative of that. Also, a shout out to Maddie, who was one of the prime movers of getting the RFP going and all of that. Your baby bird is flying, Maddie. This is great. Like this is really great. And it bodes so well for next year. So many great ideas. Yeah, I think one really small curiosity that I have is the third piece that you mentioned in terms of giving back was the White Plains PBA, and I'm just curious why the White Plains PBA specifically.
I don't know if I have a good answer to that.
Did he reach out?
Well, of course they reached out. Yeah, they gave a really good sales pitch, and they kept calling me, and so that's essentially it. But like, look, we'll sponsor something local too. Like if somebody reaches out and asks, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm I love White Plains. I love Ossining more, and so anytime
I hear you.
Big up Ossining, I can. But you all have done like great things for Ossining, so
yeah.
No criticism here. Thank you very much.
No, but good. Yeah. Good call and a shout out to Maddie. She's been such a huge support this past summer. Every issue I had, she was on the phone with me trying to sort it out and work it out as quickly as possible. So we couldn't have done it without her.
Huge help.
All right, well, I'll let you guys get back to it. We have to put some kids to bed, so.
Thanks for joining us this evening. It's great to see you. Madam Clerk.
Okay, Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahan.
Thank you, Martha. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. On tonight's agenda, we have resolutions to approve 6 local laws 1 through 6, which have been in the queue for quite a long time. So it's nice to do that. We also have we have two resolutions authorizing the Corporation Counsel to commence litigation, one with regard to tax certiorari and another with regard to a property damage matter. There is also a resolution which will allow for the publication to the board members of final versions of legislation by email, via PDF. It is a fairly recent amendment to the Municipal Home Rule Law, but it will sort of make our process a little bit simpler. And we already do it this way, so it sort of just formalizes it. And we do have the resolution with regard to the Hidden Cove project, which we have discussed a good deal with this board. With regard to executive orders, we are now up to Executive Order 68, which was issued yesterday, which is sort of twofold. One deals with the, you may have seen in the news, the hot zones or the hot spots by zip code, which the governor has basically put into red, orange, and yellow categories. Depending on which area you are, will determine essentially what kind of activities you can do. None of those hot zones are within Westchester County, I am pleased to report. But there are other provisions of the recently signed executive order, some of which deal with the ability to enforce violations of the executive orders by local municipalities for civil penalties. Interestingly enough, it provides that those civil penalties could actually be kept by the municipalities, which may be an incentive for some of the municipalities to actually to pursue enforcement on a civil basis. I will say that when I heard from Wade Beltramo at NICOM, his words were, "This executive order is a mess." That is a direct quote, but we will simply see what happens with that. With regard to our hybrid meetings, currently the governor has extended the suspension of certain provisions of the open meetings law through November the 4th. So we are able to continue doing the meetings as we are until that time. That's all for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart. Madam Clerk.
Okay, just a quick question, Stuart. For the local laws, will we be having a referendum vote, or would it just be a regular vote? Sorry, like a roll call?
Roll call on those, Martha, and also with regard to the allowing for the sending of the local laws in final version by mail, because that has to be a unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Okay, moving along to Police Chief Kevin Sylvester.
Good evening. Just a couple of quick announcements. October is among many, many causes that are celebrated in October. Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which is a cause near and dear to many of the members of our staff here, our families, and one of my personal heroes in particular. So you may see our officers with, traditionally all police officers wear black mourning bands if somebody passes away. For this month, we wear pink support bands for all those people who are battling, have battled, or will someday face the disease. Additionally, we have amended our uniform order to allow for pink undershirts, where traditionally the dark blue uniforms would go with a dark blue shirt or a black shirt, and white uniforms with a white shirt. So real men wear pink, and we support that cause. Second to that, it's been relatively quiet in Ossining, but for today, when many people may have heard quite a few sirens, in addition to the fact that it was a training day and we had an awful lot of staff working today, which made it a poor day for someone to try to run from the police. So shortly before noon today, we had a vehicle pursuit that weaved its way around a brief bit of the town and a short bit of Ossining and into Briarcliff. I'd sent an email, some details to the board, and it is posted to Facebook, but a great job by everybody. And I just wanted to quickly share a message that I received at the beginning of this meeting, and it was from a resident of one of the yards through which this foot pursuit took place. And it said, "It was impressive to see the response earlier today, and I'm happy to hear such a great outcome. Before we could figure out what happened, your officers had quick control of the situation. Although we live in Briarcliff, we're lucky to have the benefits of the Ossining PD working and protecting our neighborhoods." So proud moment for me, because there's an awful lot of news about, there's an awful lot of opinions about police officers right now. I'm proud to work with the Ossining Police Department. The people that work here, they do a tremendous job every single day, and this is the rule and not the exception in terms of performance. This is the way these folks operate, and they did a tremendous job today with no officers being injured, no witnesses or bystanders being injured, and no defendants being injured. So as bad as good of an outcome as we can get. That's all for tonight. Thanks.
Thank you for that recap of today's events and for the really positive, encouraging words about our department. It's good to hear. We don't hear it often enough, so thank you for sharing that. Madam Clerk.
Okay, moving on to organizational announcements. Is there anybody here who would like to make an organizational announcement?
So I'll just clarify, because I know that Mark Fry has his hand up for commenting on the resolutions, but if there's anybody else who wants to comment on organizational announcements, it's, you know, letting people know about, for example, this weekend's 5K 2-mile race for Ossining Matters, or for Riverkeeper the following weekend. Not seeing anybody raising their hand for that. Madam Clerk.
Okay, moving along to Village Board resolutions. Is there anybody here who would like to address the board on any of the resolutions this evening?
And before Mr. Fry begins speaking, I just want to clarify, this is people have 4 minutes to speak about any and all of the resolutions that they'd like to comment on. Who is our timekeeper? Okay, Jamie. Jamie's ready to go. All right, Mr. Fry, unmute yourself. You're welcome to speak.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I wanted to just, as an aside, thank Deputy Mayor Rika Levin for her comments about the impact of the COVID crisis. It really is moving what you said, so thank you for that. You all have in front of you, but I'm here to speak about your agenda item L, which starts on page 9 of your PDF there, attached, you know, the entire agenda. And that is a proposed resolution extending the planned waterfront special permit that you granted back in April of last year for the Plateau Associates waterfront development of 137 units on the waterfront. I did quite a lot of research on this before I wrote this letter, and I am not an attorney. I'm a land use planner, but I have to meet an awful lot of deadlines, and I have to be familiar with some fairly arcane requirements of zoning law. And as I read through this requirement of the special permit, the issuance of a special permit, I came to the conclusion, first of all, that it was very well written and very explicit. It said exactly what had to be done for the issuance of a special permit. Now, it is silent. There's nothing in the law really about the process for extension, but when I consulted a friend who is an attorney, a municipal attorney, he said, well, if it's silent on the extension process, you can be assured that the extension process needs to follow pretty much the same trajectory as the original permit. This particular permit should have been, and it's a long process, it's delineated in code. I won't go into all the details now, but it does require for the resolution, for the application, a separate special application, and it requires quite a lot of material with that application. And it further requires that simultaneously that application be sent to the planning board. So the planning board reviews everything for 90 days before the village board, and they give a recommendation to the village board, and then the village board has the authority to issue or not issue the planned waterfront special permit. In this case, the permit was set to expire October 3rd, a couple of days ago, in fact, and the applicant failed to put together a timely application, including an application to the planning board simultaneously, in order for the planning board to take a look at the amendments, the additional conditions that you have imposed on this renewal. And the same municipal attorney said that, if it had been a renewal or extension without any changes, without
30
amendment.
seconds.
I'm sorry? 30 seconds? Oh, okay. I'll speed it up. In any case, if you look after the word resolved on the page 10, you'll see that there's a series of additional conditions that were not included. And in the view of that municipal attorney, he thought that in this case, there was just no question that this should be, the proper procedure should be followed. I have tremendous respect for your corporation counsel, Mr. Kahan, but it seems to me because there is a legitimate question as to whether it's proper to proceed, I would ask the board respectfully to adjourn this item until such time as your counsel, Mr. Kahan, has had a chance to take a harder look at the procedural requirements. Thank you so much for.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fry. So is there anybody else who would like to comment on any of the resolutions? And I certainly, Mr. Kahan has responded to us via email, so I will certainly ask him to comment publicly just to clarify the situation and what our legal counsel has advised us in this particular situation. I don't see anybody else ready to comment, so please go right ahead, Stuart.
Thank you, Mayor. I did receive Mr. Fry's letter, and I did communicate to the board with respect to Mr. Fry's municipal attorney. I believe that is incorrect. The procedure has been followed. This is the standard procedure followed by the village land use councils with regard to extensions which are being sought before the permit has expired. It would not be necessary to return to the planning board or to return to the Westchester County Planning Board. That has all been done before, and this has been detailed extensively. So in my view, it is perfectly appropriate for the board to proceed as it has been here. And as the board is certainly aware, this has been a matter which has been discussed at a number of meetings by this board with the applicant and applicant's counsel being present. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Stuart. Does anybody else need to comment on this topic? Otherwise, we'll see it again when we get to item L, so we can comment on this and anything as we get to it. Madam Clerk, I don't see anybody else asking to speak about resolutions tonight.
Okay, so approval of minutes, September 16th, 2020. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the September 16th, 2020 regular meeting as presented.
So move.
Comments on the board?
Second.
Comments on the board?
Mute.
You're muted.
Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of voucher detail, October 7th, 2020. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated October 7th, 2020 in the amount of $1,020,199.25. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? A lot of money.
I was just going to say, except that it's a whole lot of money.
Does anybody, okay, you know what? We're given the report. If we have questions on it, we can ask about it. Usually when there's an exorbitant or, out of whack large number, we're given some sort of explanation as to, oh, that's because right now we just made.
No. I didn't. I went over it.
Okay.
Everything seemed to be part of that process. So.
Thanks,
yes.
Manny.
Nothing surprising. Thank you, Manny, for being our eyes on that. Appreciate it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed? Okay. Authorizing the village manager to issue a request for proposals for the Route 9 narrowing or road diet project. Resolved that upon review by the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to issue a request for proposals for the Route 9 narrowing or road diet project. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Just
I have a very important before. I know you are anxious. Who came up with the diet of the road? Where did that come from?
That is a technical term.
No, get out.
And it is a term that I learned as we're exploring these options.
Wow.
It is actually used frequently in road engineering.
Okay. Well, I thought that like somebody was being clever, but apparently it's just a technical term. I'm loving it. You're on.
Yeah, someone was clever, but it was long before it came to the Village of Ossining. I think it has to do with going from like we have 4 lanes going down to 2 lanes, and adjusting in that way. Tightening, narrowing the road there. My only comment is yay. So, yay.
Thank God.
Yes, thank God. Any and all of the above. Very excited, very excited. And then we know this is going to be a long process, but we need to get through this so that we can make the DOT really pay attention to us and put us on their list of important projects that will happen in the not too distant future. If we don't do this, we're never going to get anywhere. So thank you very much for moving this forward.
We're happy to have it moving forward.
Madam Clerk.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Resolution authorizing tax certiorari payment for Westerly Realty Corp and Westerly Enterprise LP.
Martha, all you need to do is read the first whereas and the last 3 resolved.
Got it. Whereas certain tax certiorari proceedings were instituted against the town of Ossining by Westerly Realty Corp and Westerly Enterprises LP to review the assessment against petitioner's property situated at Westerly Road in the town of Ossining and designated as sections 89.18-1-20, 89.18-1-21, 89.18-1-22.1, 97.06-13.1, and 97.06-1-4 for the 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 assessment years, which proceedings were commenced in the Supreme Court of the State of New York, Westchester County, under index number 6706613, 67469-14, 68051-15, 65435-16, 67158-17, 66854-18, and 66948-19. And resolved that now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining, upon certification by the village treasurer that all of the aforesaid taxes have been paid, hereby authorizes and directs the village treasurer to make the payment of such refund of real property taxes due to Westerly Realty Corp and Westerly Enterprises LP to Watkins & Watkins LLP as attorney and agent for the petitioners as required by said order and judgment, and be it further resolved that the village treasurer is authorized to make the aforesaid payments so the village may avoid the payment of any penalties, and be it further resolved that the village treasurer shall make a notion in the margin of the assessment rolls of the Village of Ossining the said assessments were reduced and payments or refunds of the overpayments of real property taxes was made pursuant to said judgment. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Adoption of proposed local law 1 of 2020, a local law amending chapter 250, vehicle and traffic of the Village of Ossining Code.
Martha, to make it easier for you and for the board, all you need to do is read the first whereas clause and the resolved, and that would be for E, F, G, H, I, and J.
Got it. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining has been considering the adoption of proposed local law 1-2020 titled A Local Law Amending Chapter 250, Vehicle and Traffic of the Village of Ossining Code, and now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby adopts proposed local law 1-2020 as local law 1-2020 and directs that the said local law be filed and or distributed in accord with applicable law. Do I have a motion?
So move. Second.
Comments on the board? Okay, Martha, and we're ready for our first roll call vote of the night, right?
Yes. Trustee Lopez? Trustee Levin?
Aye.
Trustee Quesada?
Aye.
Trustee Fritchie?
Aye.
Mayor Garrity?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to adoption of proposed local law 2-2020, a local law amending chapter 75, article 2, dog control law of the Village of Ossining Code. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining has been considering the adoption of proposed local law 2-2020 titled a local law amending chapter 75, article 2, dog control law of the Village of Ossining Code. And now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby adopts proposed local law 2-2020 as local law 2-2020 and directs that the said local law be filed and or distributed in accord with applicable law. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments on the board? I'll just say this is a very, very minor as far as the amount of words that had to be changed in this local law, but really what it does is it puts the, turns the responsibility over from the village to the town, which is kind of how it was happening and what the state expected us to do for a long time, but we're just bringing the code to where people sort of thought it was. So now we're in line with, everything is as it all lines up properly now for our folks in the clerk's office who handle this. Madam Clerk.
Trustee Lopez? Okay, Trustee Levin?
Aye.
Trustee Casada?
Aye.
Trustee Fritchie?
Aye.
Mayor Garrity?
Aye.
Okay.
Omar, you're muted.
Adoption of proposed local law 3-2020, a local law amending chapter 91, article 3, building construction fees, chapter 233, the subdivision of land, and chapter 270, zoning of the Village of Ossining Code. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining has been considering the adoption of proposed local law 3-2020 titled a local law amending chapter 91, article 3, building construction fees, chapter 233, subdivision of land, and chapter 270, zoning of the Village of Ossining Code. And now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby adopts proposed local law 3-2020 as local law 3-2020 and directs that said local law be filed and or distributed in accord with applicable law. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. I do.
Okay. Comments on the board? Yes, you do. Please go right ahead, Manny.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Victoria. Mayor. Stuart, and help me with this one in regards to the application fees and the changes, because we are going through a budget process. After this law, if it gets passed tonight, when will the implementation be for the new fees for or the charges for these changes will be taking place?
Well, in terms of the actual escrow, that will go into effect once the law goes into effect, which will probably be towards the end of this month when the Secretary of State ultimately files it. In terms of any fee changes that might be required, the board could either change the fees now or it can be part of the 2021 fee schedule. But in terms of actually beginning to request escrows and the amount of escrows through the village planner, that will go into effect once the law is filed up by the Secretary of State in Albany.
So in regards to a current application where previously may not have to have an escrow account, how is that going to be worked out?
They're going to have to now set up an escrow account. If it's
Okay, so that's something,
if it's that kind of case, they'll have to set up an escrow account.
Okay, so pretty much, so after this takes effect, and I'm assuming it's going to be a meeting with the applicant or whoever the applicants are to inform them that the changes have been made and they have to go through the process, correct?
Yes, we've already been setting up escrows before this time anyway. But to the extent that if there is an escrow that needs to be set up, that will be communicated to the applicant so that they can begin that process, correct?
All right, thank you, Stuart.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else with comments or questions about this? Madam Clerk.
Okay, Trustee Lopez?
Aye.
Trustee Levin?
Aye.
Trustee Casada?
Aye.
Trustee Fritchie?
Aye.
Mayor Garrity?
Aye.
Okay. Adoption of proposed local law 4/2020, a local law amending chapter 190, Parks and Recreation of the Village of Ossining Code. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining has been considering the adoption of proposed local law 4/2020 titled a local law amending chapter 190, Parks and Recreation of the Village of Ossining Code to create a local youth borough. And now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby adopts proposed local law 4/2020 as local law 4/2020 and directs that said local law be filed and or distributed in accord with applicable law. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments on the board. I'm sure there's comments on this one because this is an exciting one. Trustee Levin, you must want to say something.
No, I just, what exactly are we passing a legislation on? Like, what specifically is this?
You're approving the creation of a local youth board.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Somehow I thought we already did this. But
it's a lot of steps, isn't it? It's a lot of steps.
We've just discussed this so many times that I thought it was already done.
You and me both.
So I don't know what else to say except this is fantastic. And
exciting.
It's getting more fantastic as we go through a pandemic, and you know, we see what our youth is going through. Not just our youth, in all fairness, but you know, I wish I could help everybody all the time, but this is just such a great thing for us to do, and always surprised that it hasn't been done. We haven't had a youth bureau being established in, I think, 20 years in Westchester. Actually, a little bit surprising. I think it's great, and I think we have the right staff in place to help make this happen, and the right political strength to make it happen, and everybody else. So I'm excited to get going with this. Something to look forward to in the new year, frankly.
Excellent. Anybody else want to comment? Otherwise, we just get to go ahead and vote and make this a reality.
Let's move.
Okay, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk.
Trustee Lopez?
Aye.
Trustee Levin?
Aye.
Trustee Quesada?
Aye.
Trustee Fritchie?
Aye.
Mayor Garrity?
Aye.
Okay. Adoption of proposed local law 5/2020, a local law amending chapter 212, article 8, part 2, sewer rents, and chapter 259, article 5, services, rates, and charges of the Village of Ossining Code. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining has been considering the adoption of proposed local law 5/2020 titled a local law amending chapter 212, article 8, part 2, sewer rents, and chapter 259, article 5, rates and charges of the Village of Ossining Code. And now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby adopts proposed local law 5/2020 as local law 5/2020 and directs that said local law be filed and or distributed in accordance with applicable law. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? No, my understanding is, my recollection of this, Stuart, is this is largely a code that is going to now reflect the practice that had sometimes been happening anyway, which allows people to make partial payments of their water and sewer bills. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Trustee Lopez?
Aye.
Trustee Levin?
Aye.
Trustee Quesada?
Aye.
Trustee Fritchie?
Aye.
Mayor Garrity?
Aye.
Almost done. Adoption of proposed local law 6/2020, a local law amending chapter 118, environmental quality review of the Village of Ossining Code. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining has been considering the adoption of proposed local law 6/2020 titled a local law amending chapter 118, environmental quality review of the Village of Ossining Code. And now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby adopts proposed local law 6/2020 as local law 6/2020 and directs that said local law be filed and or distributed in accordance with applicable law. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk.
Okay. Trustee Lopez? Trustee Levin?
Aye.
Trustee Quesada?
Aye.
Trustee Fritchie?
Aye.
Mayor Garrity?
Aye.
Okay. 1 second. Okay. Okay, authorizing the Corporation Counsel to commence legal action against the Town of Ossining Assessor, the Town of Ossining Board of Assessment Review, challenging the assessed value of various village-owned properties located in the unincorporated portion of the Town of Ossining. Whereas Section C310 of the Charter of the Village of Ossining provides in part, it shall be the duty of the Corporation Counsel or his or her designee to appear for and prosecute and defend all suits, actions, or legal proceedings of any kind brought by or against the village. And whereas the Charter further provides the Corporation Counsel shall have no power or authority to settle, discontinue, or compromise any pending suit, action, or legal proceedings without first being authorized to do so by the Board of Trustees. And whereas following the issuance of the tentative 2020 assessment roll by the Town of Ossining Assessor, the Village of Ossining filed complaints on real property assessments for 2020 regarding the following village-owned properties in the unincorporated portion of the Town of Ossining, as identified by section block lot numbers 81.17-1-66, 90.10-3-37, 90.19-2-69, 80.15-1-1, 80.15-1-3, 80.15-1-2, 80.14-2-11, 80.11-1-66, and whereas the Town of Ossining Board of Assessment Review issued notices of determination date August 13, 2020, denying the village's complaints for a deduction in the assessed value, and whereas the Town of Ossining 2020 assessment roll became final on September 15, 2020, and whereas pursuant to real property tax law section 702, a proceeding to review the assessment of real property shall be commenced within 30 days after the final completion and filing of the assessment roll containing such assessment. Now therefore be it resolved that the Corporation Counsel is authorized to prosecute an action against the Town of Ossining, Assessor of the Town of Ossining, the Town of Ossining Board of Assessment Review, and such other necessary parties challenging the assessments for the aforementioned village-owned properties which assessments appear in the 2020 final assessment roll. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
This is a really interesting one, and I'll just give a little bit of perspective for folks because it's very unusual for a municipal government to actually pay taxes on property that is used for the benefit of the public. So in this case, the Ossining water system is owned by the Village of Ossining, but we have, I believe, about 9 properties that actually exist in the unincorporated Town of Ossining. And those properties are taxed. They're utility properties, so the way that the tax is determined is different than the way that a property is assessed. For example, your private home is assessed using comparables to other houses that are of similar size in the neighborhood. Utility properties are assessed very differently. And since the village water fund does have to pay taxes, we have an obligation to make sure that we're paying the least amount of taxes possible. That's the obligation we have to all of our water customers, everybody we provide water for, which is everyone in the village and the unincorporated Town of Ossining. And so we are going through this process, and it'll be really interesting to be in this position. It's not a common position for the village to be in, so I thank our staff for following through with this request for a reassessment of our properties. If there's anything people want us on the staff want to clarify, please do. Otherwise, I'm ready to vote. Or of course, my colleagues on the board are always welcome to come in.
I think you captured that, Mayor. Thank you for that.
Water properties is near and dear to my heart.
I just want to add my 2 cents on this, I guess. And I'm not going to go too long because it's already 9:20. I do want to thank our village manager and assistant village manager to do, if you guys didn't see the school board presentation from last week, and that kind of will put a little bit more things on perspective of what this topic is. So they did a fantastic job, and of course, Andy Tees was there, part of the whole presentation, and the 3 of them were fantastic. There were a lot of good questions from the school board in regards to this particular lots that we're talking about now. So I'm eager to keep talking about this because we've been talking about this for over 4 years, 5 years. Thank you, Mayor.
Apparently.
Yeah, 5 years. I was off for years, so that kind of doesn't count for me. But over 5 years. So, you know, and it's something that we are going to keep moving forward with our water plant. That's something that we need for Ossining, not just for the town or the village, but it's for Ossining. So I'm eager to keep talking about this and actually learning more in a public setting. So yeah, so I appreciate that, and thank you, Stuart, for bringing this over to our attention as well, and keep moving forward with this. So I'm in 100%, 120 or 50% in support of this.
I think, Karen, are we also going to be talking about this, getting a little bit of an update next week during our work session,
Yeah.
the water properties and exempt tax exempt status potential more broadly? You're muted.
Thought I am muted. We will be presenting the same presentation that we presented to the school board last Wednesday, really for updating the board and just for public education. Obviously no action to be taken by the village board, but as a way to, it is a complicated issue. It is a lot of layers. We did a tremendous amount of detailed research to come up with a presentation that really illuminates the benefits of tax exemption to all people who are in the water district, and whether town or village. And I do want to thank Assistant Village Manager Maddie Zahach and Dale Brennan, our treasurer, and our former treasurer, Tom Warren, along with Paul Fraioli and Andy Teese of our water department, on the work that they did putting that information together. It's been a long road, but the meeting went very well at the school board, and we're moving forward in a very positive way. So we look forward to presenting to you all and just refreshing your memories and bringing you all up to speed next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
No, is this
I
a
think
roll
we have to
call?
do a roll call vote, right?
Not for this, you do not,
No,
Mayor.
not for this
Okay, okay. All right, then aye. Yes, I think
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. For the following resolution for L, do you want me to read the whole thing, Stuart?
I apologize, Martha, but yes.
Okay. I'll try to go as fast as I can.
If you're losing your voice, I'm happy to help out, but just let me know.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Resolution extending the planned waterfront special permit for the Hidden Cove on the Hudson development. Whereas by resolution dated April 3rd, 2019, the Board of Trustees approved the application by Plateau Associates applicant for a planned waterfront special permit for the project known as Hidden Cove on the Hudson on property located at the North Water Street extension having tax map designation of section 89.14, block 1, lot 11, and whereas pursuant to Village Code section 270-54F, the approval by the Board of Trustees shall expire 18 months from the date of this approval unless a building permit has been issued for the special permit use or an extension has been granted upon a separate application to the Village Board. And whereas by correspondence dated August 17, 2020, the applicant requested an extension of the planned waterfront special permit. And whereas the Board of Trustees publicly discussed the application for an extension at the September 9th work session and again during an advice on council held on September 16, 2020. And whereas Village Code section 270-54C provides the village board in approving any special permit thereunder shall require conformance to any supplementary requirements applying to such uses generally and may establish such other conditions or limitations upon the use or characteristics of the use which are reasonably related to the public health, safety, and general welfare, and as may be necessary to carry out the intent of this chapter. And whereas the Village of Ossining Planning Board, by resolution dated December 31st, 2018, granted site plan and conditional use approval for the aforementioned property. And whereas the Planning Board site plan and conditional use approval resolution, Planning Board resolution, is made a part of this extension of the planned waterfront special permit as if more fully set forth herein. And whereas the Planning Board subsequently granted to the applicant a 12-month extension of the site plan and conditional use approval through December 2020, and whereas the Planning Board Resolution 48 included 48 conditions, including a series of conditions to be met prior to issuance of a building permit, and whereas among the conditions to be met prior to the issuance of a building permit in the Planning Board Resolution was the following: certain public improvements and amenities which are proportional to the density bonuses requested by the applicant are proposed as part of the project and will service the property and enhance overall public infrastructure within. Initial plans of these improvements have been provided. Detailed plans showing certain sewer, water, and green building improvements shall be provided to the satisfaction of the village engineer. With regard to water, the notes on the most recent plan submission dated December 16, 2018 shall remain on the site plan. With regard to sewer, the following notes shall be added to the site plan. The applicant shall perform a closed-circuit television (CCTV) inspection of the existing public sanitary sewer main to limits reasonably established by the village engineer as required by the Westchester County Health Department as mitigation to reduce inflow and infiltration I&I. Based upon final review of the CCTV inspection video and report, the applicant shall perform point repairs and/or relining of the existing public sanitary sewer main as reasonably determined and to limits established by the village engineer to serve the project and overall sewer shed. In addition to the CCTV inspection described above, a pressure test will be performed on the force main running from the below described pump station to Snowden Avenue. If the pressure test reveals in the reasonable judgment of the village engineer the repairs are needed, they shall be performed by the applicant. The applicant shall perform upgrades and improvements to the existing village-owned sanitary sewer pump station located on North Water Street, as required in the reasonable judgment of the village engineer to serve the project, which may also benefit other properties in the overall sewer shed. Improvements shall include and not be limited to replacement of existing pumps and pump controls, relining the existing wet well, and installation of a gas-fired emergency backup generator. And whereas the Board of Trustees also adopts as a more fully set forth herein the determination by the Zoning Board of Appeals granted on December 11, 2018 for 3 area variances subject to the following conditions. A, that the applicant shall obtain all necessary permits from the Army Corps of Engineers for the relocation of the existing water course. B, the applicant shall obtain all necessary easements and/or legal documentation needed for the proposed improvements to the North Water Street extension. C, the applicant shall obtain all necessary permits for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority for construction work to be performed within the MTA's right-of-way. And D, the applicant or its successor in interest shall be responsible in perpetuity for the repair, upkeep, and maintenance of the North Water Street extension roadway, providing access hereto. And whereas the applicant has since received 3 extensions of the area variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals, with the most recent extension scheduled to expire on December 11, 2020. And whereas, as the Board of Trustees, having considered the application for an extension of the planned waterfront special permit, having heard from village staff and consultants, and having reviewed certain documents, now therefore be it resolved that the application for an extension of the planned waterfront special permit is approved upon the following conditions, which conditions are in addition to the conditions noted in the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals resolutions. The planned waterfront special permit is extended until December 11, 2021. The applicant shall report to the Board of Trustees no later than June 30, 2021 as to the progress of obtaining a building permit, compliance with the site plan condition, use permit resolution of the Planning Board, and area variance resolution with conditions issued by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Prior to the issuance of a building permit by the village and building inspector, and based upon the reasonable judgment of the village engineer, the applicant or its successors in interest shall enter into written agreement with the village of Ossining in recordable form, which agreement shall obligate the applicant and its successors in interest to the property to undertake at the applicant and or successor's own expense. A, installation of an 8-inch water main to replace the 4-inch water main as depicted on the attached plan, which is made part of this resolution. B, installation of 8-inch loop connection to existing water main on North Water Street as depicted on the attached plan. And C, relocation of hydrants as depicted on the attached plan. The plans for this project shall be revised to include specific delineation of the work described in this paragraph, and the plan shall be subject to approval by the village engineer and other officials as required. The applicant and its assessors in interest shall be responsible for all submittals and approval required by the Westchester County Department of Health and any other governmental agency. The village engineer may require that the applicant and successor in interest post a performance bond in a form approved by the Corporation Council, which performance bond shall be in such amount to guarantee to the village that the applicant and its successors in interest will faithfully construct or cause to be constructed the required public improvements and utilities which are part of the approved site plan and the conditions set forth in this resolution, and that such construction shall be completed with a reasonable period of time prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy. The performance bond amount, completion schedule, improvements covered, inspection, and bond approval must be received prior to the issuance of the building permit. The work described above shall be completed and inspected prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. The applicant shall submit to the Village Corporation Council prior to the commencement on construction all necessary easements for access to the proposed 8-inch water main loop system and to any portion of the water main to be replaced with 8-inch pipe which encroaches upon the applicant's property, the village shall be afforded an easement to assess, maintain, and repair the water systems that will be impacted by the project. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Need a second and then we can talk about it.
Second.
This is something that's been a matter of discussion at a number of meetings. Do people have any questions or comments or things they'd like to have clarified on the record that we've exchanged some emails about up to this point?
Stuart, I have a question. I had emailed, you put in a year to the end of 2021. I had asked that be shortened. Is it just something that we can discuss and change now, or is it an unchangeable item that it must be that date?
You can change it, Trustee Levin, if you wish.
Okay.
I did it just so it's understood. I did that because that would be when the next site plan resolution would expire, and that would be their last site plan extension. And when the next, assuming they get an extension by the zoning board, the next zoning board extension would expire.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead, man.
No, and I was gonna ask the same question because obviously my recollection was we wanted to extend not 18 months, obviously, because of what's going on. But if we can change that, I don't know how the rest of the board will feel, but my suggestion will be to June, when I'm assuming that if they do get an extension from the zoning board at the end of the year, they'll take them to the next 6 months, and hopefully by then they'll be able to do something with that site, regardless of, some development. Either they do something or they sell it. But I do want to say something, since that I see Mr. Paul Stone is on here on the Zoom, and I'm going to sort of try to read a portion of the letter that he sent to us, and is 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph on his letter, I think. As included in the requirement for the installation of the water loop, we are disappointed to hear that the board had prudently decided to include this as a condition. It is our understanding that no professional, and I want to make sure that this is understood, is our understanding that no professional had concluded that is necessity. Rather, there was simple to be an enhancement infrastructure for the benefit of the property's owners looking to develop on their land. Let me tell you something, Mr. Paul Stone. The people who recommended this are the professionals, are our village engineer, are consultants. So for you to say that no professional mentioned or advised the board in regards to the looping system, you are incorrect. So again, the professionals and our village staff, including our lawyers and our staff members that work very hard for this, are the professionals here. So make that to be clear. And I am not in support of this application unless we shorten the frame time to June 21st. Thank you.
Stuart, I have a question. I have a
Sure.
question as far as does the zoning board, correct me if I'm wrong, unless there's no significant changes in what their variances that they're looking for, it's pretty much an automatic that they give them the extension, correct?
That would be correct, Trustee Fritchie.
So is there anything that's been added in these conditions that would require any type of variance to where they could deny this extension?
No, there's nothing that would impact the area variances that have previously been granted, nor would it require new area variances for them.
Okay, so to line this up, to try and line this up, when is the zoning board? They should be due
in December, I believe, as well.
December. So even if we lined up with December, it doesn't do us any good because if they haven't changed anything, they're going to get their variances. So I agree with Trustee Casada. I just don't know a time frame. I think we need to come to a better time frame than 18 months personally.
Okay, just so it's known, it's not 18 months, it's actually 14. I did it because I'm assuming, and I may be incorrect, you know what happens if you assume, but I'm assuming that what may have happened here, that would happen is that if the planning board gives their extension, that would go till December 11th of 2021. So therefore, I wanted to have everything essentially sunset at the same time, rather than sort of sunset at different times. But again, it's up to the board. If you want to do an earlier date than December 11th, we can just make a motion here and we can just change those dates. That's not a problem.
Understood. Thank you.
So I just want to play this out. I mean, essentially, what the benefit for a developer of having all of their permits lined up is that they then either can move forward with pulling their building permit and doing something, or they have a property that has more value and they can sell it and somebody else can come in and potentially do something with it. So if we would like, so the downside to having this permit expire while they still have their other approvals is that the board and staff go through this exercise again. And unless there's something additional, that an additional condition that we feel needs to be put on, which I think this is, you know, a big change in the additional conditions that you've added here this round. It's another opportunity to review things, but if they have everything else lined up, I won't be around. If you guys want to do it in June, go ahead and do it in June. But to me, I understood the logic of waiting until next December and the potential benefit to the community, or the potential for something worthwhile to happen on that property, or for it to be sold. For them to have permits at hand allows for that to happen and doesn't require the village board to go through this exercise again 8 months from now. That would be the reason to do it next December. But you know, if Manny's not going to support it, you know, I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to not have something happen tonight, because I think it should happen for the next 14 months. So if it can only happen for the next 8 months, then whatever, I'll vote for that. But I don't know where everybody else has had that. I don't see the value in going to just June. I only see the downside.
You have any comments, Omar, or you're good?
No, I feel like the main points have been said. This is something that I feel has unfortunately gone around and around, talking about loops, and has devolved to a point where it should be a pretty straight. And we unfortunately keep getting in these details. And so I'm also in favor of extending. If nothing else,
can't hear you.
Something is happening, though you're going in and out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm in favor of a shorter extension, like an 8-month extension or something like that. If nothing else, so that we can continue to have the conversation. I don't want that to be an obstacle to moving forward, but I'm just sad that it continues to be unfruitful, that we can't just move forward.
Okay, I'm still not sure where we stand. It's written as going through next December. There has been some suggestion from Rika and Manny that they would prefer it to go through just June. I don't know if they're both still feeling that way.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that in an email that Bob and I shared, Bob was involved in this years and years ago, zoning board, correct, Bob?
That's correct.
So I also looked to his expertise, having the years. This has been going on for more than a decade. This is a developer that, and I think that Omar's right, it has devolved, but it's devolved because the developer continues to create that scenario, as far as I'm concerned. And there's lots of conversations. We do not need to go to circle around the drain. It is if the tone in our voices don't impress upon the public our thorough disappointment in the way this has gone and all the work that has been done with extensions and all sorts of stuff that I just can't even repeat because it gets into too long of a conversation. But Bob, I'm just going to ask you, I read your email. You were involved even when the folks here were from zoning, and you suggested a tighter time frame. Have you changed your mind? Are you still thinking 8 months because it makes sense? I'd just like to hear from you because you and Manny have actually longer institutional knowledge than I do, and I believe that this knowledge is actually very important, and it's important for the public to feel very secure that we have bent over backwards, this board, previous trustees, backwards and forwards, and so has the staff with this developer. So I just want to hear from you. What are your thoughts about the actual months? Because that's really all we're down to now.
Well, I guess my question is, does it benefit us or does it penalize them if we shorten these, or if they I mean, I understand the place setting that Stuart put in there to align with the planning board, but if it's legwork, I think we're just going to have to go through again until that we get to the planning board stage. You know, even though we don't give them this permit or it expires in so many months, we're still in limbo, I believe, between that and what happens at the planning board. And the zoning board is just a no-brainer. That's going to sail right through. So the zoning board doesn't even equate in here.
But the planning board is going to review in this December, and then they would give a 12-month renewal, right? Extension.
I didn't understand it that way. If that's the case.
Stuart, can you clarify?
That's correct. They have one more 12-month extension that they're entitled to.
So Stuart, what happens if we shorten our end here to 6 or 8 months? Can you tell me how that plays out?
Yeah, they'd have to come back to you in 6 or 8 months.
Right. It's just
but don't they have to come back with some progress made or not? Okay.
Then we know where that's.
I'm looking at you. I'm not looking at the screen anymore because that's the point of this conversation.
Yeah, I just don't have a bowl of ice cream in front of me. It just doesn't. I understand. I believe that it should be shorter too, but I just don't know if it benefits us or it's just going to give it. We're going to go through this again in 6 months. You know, if they grant them this extension, do they have any? Does the planning board have any need not to grant them an extension, Stuart?
It's pretty much, Trustee Fritchie, the same as with the zoning board, unless there's been a significant change in circumstance. They would most likely grant it. I can tell you that the last time it was before them, it pretty much sailed through with very little discussion.
Okay, so with these conditions that we have added,
right?
Does that change the applicant towards the planning board?
I think what it simply does is it makes the planning board aware that there are additional conditions that have been imposed upon this applicant for things that have to be completed prior to issuance of a building permit and prior to a CO. But in terms of specifically the conditions that are in the site plan, that they're not contradictory, so it should not impact that.
Okay, well, it's no different than the conditions we set on the zoning board when we granted the certificate of appropriateness, which which nothing's been adhered to anyways. So, it's
right.
You know what I'm saying? Do we align it with if they're going to give them to their last extension? And believe me, I'm with you as far as making it shorter.
No, I didn't think
we're gonna go through this. We're gonna go through this in another 6 months, and we're gonna grant it till we align up with the planning board.
So the difference here is they need to meet this condition. Stuart, how long do they have to meet the conditions that we added?
They have to have, well, the conditions we've put in have to be undertaken prior to, they have to have the plans done and approved prior to the issuance of the building permit, as well as a signed agreement with the village as to the work they're doing. That has to be before a building permit. The work itself has to be concluded before there is a certificate of occupancy issued.
So in a time frame, they could really not go for a building permit until December of 21.
That's correct. That's right. Because at that point, if they do not go,
what are we doing?
Because at that point, if they don't do it, they would have to restart the whole process, because then they can't get another extension.
Okay.
So our hands are almost tied, really. I mean, yeah, we could not grant it, but they're going to come back in front of us, and we're going to go through all of this again, to where hopefully if we grant it, maybe they sell it and they all go away.
Okay.
I don't know. Did that help you?
No,
Did that help you, Rika?
absolutely. Yeah, it's different than the emails, and it's very helpful actually to have it laid out like that. I think not just for me, but the public record and some of the comments we made, because we're very familiar with the people we're dealing with here. Manny, any other comments? Because I see where the vote's going. Which way are you going? Any comments?
I'm still going to be in the 6 months, and the reason why is part of the reasons why actually Bob brought it up in regards to, look, if a good developer is going to do something, no matter what kind of climate they are, they're going to do something. This particular project, and like I can speak to another project on State Street, they've been over years, is over a decade. So they haven't done any progress. So what is going to take for us to have another conversation in 7 months from now? The reality is we can have this conversation at the end of 2021 and nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. So I'm okay with having a conversation 7 months from now in regards to the special permit, because by that time, we can change our mind and be like, you know what, you guys don't deserve anything because you haven't done any progress. Nothing has changed from now to then.
Now I get it.
Haven't done anything.
So the thing is, they don't have to make progress on anything until they pull the permit, until they pull the building permit. So there's, if they don't, for whatever reason, if they're not eager to get their building started, then they're not going to start anything until they have all their, the thing is, us having our permit expire in June doesn't change anything other than the village board having to do more work to renew the permit, because assuming that the planning board gives them their approval this December, they have that for all of next year. It's almost an automatic approval from the ZBA, as Bob has explained to us.
Exactly.
So that's going to also go through, ultimately through next December. But my understanding, Stuart, is that next December is really the drop dead date, and there's no more extensions, right?
There's no more.
Then they have to reapply.
There's no more extensions to the site plan, Mayor. That's correct.
Right.
Once they get past that second 1-year extension, they would have to start their process all over again.
So next December, when the planning board's, when their deadline comes up, they have to start the whole process over again. So, I mean, that really is the deadline. Our piddly little thing here is just an interruption, more work for you guys to do next June if you don't just go through the December and have it line up with the planning board.
And Manny, I understand totally. I feel exactly the same way you do, but I'm just come to grips with reality that it's just going to be more paperwork and legwork for us to do in June. And I can entertain the conversation too, but I'm sure there's going to be other things more worthy of conversation than this developer in June. And to Rika, as far as my previous emails, you could gather where I was coming from about those emails, but how I'm unhappy with this developer. And that's why I was pretty straightforward, but now that I'm seeing it, it's
and I don't disagree with you. Just keep in mind that the other option that we have is not to grant the special permit. And guess what?
We could do that. We could do that right now.
So that's another option too. I mean, it's not just extended to the end of next year, but it's also, do we want to go through this? So, but again, I can see where it's going. So I'm going to leave it off to the rest of the board, and we can go from there. And maybe next year, we'll see if something happens, So I'll leave it up to the majority.
So Stuart, if we do not grant this tonight, where does that put the developer?
Well, he does not have his density. It means he would have to start all over with a new site plan.
That's a whole nother conversation I'm opening up right now.
This is
I got nowhere to go.
You should get a seat over there by the camera.
I'm just gonna walk down by the train.
Okay, so if we're not really seriously entertaining like the idea of not approving this, I mean, there's been a pretty significant effort made to really strengthen the conditions here and to make this developer have to comply with the recommendations of our engineer and our water superintendent, and that would, to me, was something that was really important to accomplish. I'm really glad that we were able to accomplish that with the language that makes sense. Thank you, Stuart and Paul, for working on that and having it, really reflect what is best practice to protect the whole water system, but particularly the folks in that whole part of town. So to me, we made this effort for a reason, because we had the intention of operating in good faith to move forward with this extension. And if the land use boards are operating in the same manner, then the developer is going to have the opportunity to either, make something happen, sell it, or start fresh. And I think that the village board should go ahead and approve this as it's written, which goes through next December, and that gives 14 months for them to make something happen or not. And we can have done our due diligence in putting forward the right conditions to be able to look out for the interests of the folks who would be in that development if it were built, and everybody who's dependent on our water system to function properly. I see no upside to the June date. Right now we have a motion and a second, or as it is written, which is for it to go through next December, correct?
Correct.
So if there are no other comments, I'm going to throw it over to the clerk for a vote. Going once, going twice. Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstain.
Same. Okay. Authorization for the village manager to sign an agreement with Matrix Consulting Group to conduct an assessment in accordance with Executive Order 203. Resolved that upon review by the Corporation Counsel, the village manager is authorized to sign an agreement with Matrix Consulting Group, 1650 South Amplet Boulevard, Suite 213, San Mateo, California, 94402, to conduct an assessment of the Ossining Police Department in accordance with Executive Order 203, New York State Police Department Reinvention Collaborative, issued June 12, 2020, and be it further resolved, the terms of the agreement are detailed in the proposal by Matrix Consulting Group dated July 31st, 2020, as supplemented by discussions with Matrix Consulting Group representatives, including the conference on October 1st, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So,
Can we get a second?
One second. Thank you.
So as it says that the agreement as detailed in the proposal from July and supplemented by discussions from October 1st, and I know that those discussions there's still gonna be a little bit of back and forth between our council and Matrix Consulting. I'll just update folks, and Omar Lopez, I'm sure, will chime in as well. The working committee had a conversation last week, and some of the things we talked about were perhaps a more robust public engagement plan than had been initially requested in the RFP and detailed in the proposal. So those are a little bit of the conversation that I think we'll have to do some sort of specificity in the contract. And there'll be a little bit more back and forth on that. But we had a pretty thoughtful conversation, and there have been some follow-up emails related to that Stuart will make sure is accommodated for and specified in the contract. Trustee Lopez, do you want to comment on anything to do with this?
thank you, Madam Mayor. So we collected feedback, both qualitative and quantitative, from a number of stakeholders, from representatives of the Ossining Police Department, from representatives from the community, that in response to the interview we had with Matrix. And the result of that was, as you described, a feeling of the three major qualifications we were looking for, they would largely be able to fulfill. So one, of being able to have subject matter expertise, two, of having the ability to bring together members of the community for feedback, so getting buy-in from the community in order to get their feedback on police reform and reinvention. And then three, the ability to help us put together a set of recommendations that the board would ultimately approve after presenting it to the community. And although it was not a unanimous choice to go with Matrix, I don't want to misrepresent anybody in the group in their feeling about that. I will say that there was a consistent level of feedback about their ability to fulfill those three qualifications. So I am eager to get going on this work, and my hope is that they'll be able to help us to do that.
If I may add to that, thank you for that. The board has looked at a number of multi-layered, multi-year initiatives that the staff has put forth. And just so the public understands, I think I'd like to make sort of two sort of headlines. One is that Trustee Lopez and Mayor Garrity are in a sense representing the board and keeping us in the loop about what is going on. We're doing that with a number of initiatives. We have about 22 initiatives on the boards, if you will, and we have come to the conclusion that all five of us being present at all of those does not serve the public, as well as assigning a couple of the trustees to different initiatives. So that should not be mistaken with the fact that we're not being updated or we're not involved. On the contrary, it is a highly efficient way for all of us who very much enjoy working together on multiple initiatives as we move forward. So if you do send emails to BOT, you may receive it back from, in this particular initiative, from Omar and from the mayor, but that should not be confused with anybody's lack of passion about each and every initiative, just that we'd like to move more initiatives forward. Second headline is that you may hear that other municipalities in the state of New York are approaching this differently. That is actually executive orders always seem very precise and legalese, but once you read them, you realize that the governor, in doing executive orders like these, oftentimes leaves quite a bit of elasticity for the local government to decide for itself what the best approach is for its community. And so we will learn from other municipalities what they might be doing, but we also believe that this is a path forward for us to make sense. Not everyone is going to hire consultants in this. We thought that we could really do this in a very important and look at it deeply and widely to engage as many people as we could. So I'm looking forward to, as has already been stated, to the results. And I do thank the staff, because a few months ago this wasn't even on the boards as an initiative, and they've really stepped up and have been very helpful, and we're moving forward with it. So just wanted to make the public aware of how we're approaching it and why.
Anybody else with questions or comments? This is a pretty big initiative that, as Trustee Levin just pointed out, was not on our radar until fairly recently. I will also just say that the working committee has now met a few times, and it's a really very thoughtful and engaged group that is really dedicating a significant amount of time and effort to try and help this process to be done in a way that is going to be well received by the community and really effective. So thank you to everybody who's participating in that. All right, Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Mute on, sorry. Aye.
Okay. Fire Department appointment, Ossining Fire Police and Emergency Squad. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the Fire Chief Marco Morocho, Ossining, New York, was elected an active member of the Ossining Fire Police and Emergency Squad for exterior firefighting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fire Department appointment, Ossining Hose Company number 1, resolved that upon the recommendation of the fire chief, Jamie Crealis, Ossining, New York, was elected an active member of Ossining Hose Company number 1 for interior firefighting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Oh, sorry.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Fire Department appointment, Ossining Hose Company number 1, resolved that upon the recommendation of the fire chief, Anthony Vitale, Ossining, New York, was elected an active member of Ossining Hose Company number 1 for interior firefighting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Comments on the board? Madam
All
Clerk?
those in favor? Sorry.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Fire Department Drivers List Independent Hose Company number 6, resolved that upon recommendation of the Fire Chief, Brian Poricelli was placed on the driver's list of Independent Hose Company number 6. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Fire Department removal from active roles, Independent Hose Company number 6, resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby removes Charles Osland and John Diaz from the active roles of Independent Hose Company number 6. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board?
Yes, I do have just a quick comment. Those two gentlemen are being removed because they have passed on, and there's probably over 100 years of dedication from those two guys. So I just want that to be known. They're not being removed because they were bad members. They have passed on, and like I said, it's over 100 years worth of dedication.
Well, thank you. Thank you for reminding us of the really personal contributions that are made by so many people in our community. And sometimes when we do take the names off the rolls, it is for exactly reasons like that. The fire companies are just sort of doing some housekeeping with their paperwork. So we also thank them for taking care of that. Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Fire Department removal from active roles, Hollow Hose Company number 5, resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby removes Kevin Castro from the active roles of Hollow Hose Company number 5. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. Is there any continuing business of the board?
I'm looking at Stuart because I don't think there's any continuing business. We have a couple of new things in a moment.
Correct.
Anybody
yes.
else? Okay. No continuing business, Madam Clerk.
Okay. New business of the board. Authorizing emailing a final version of proposed local laws to mayor and trustees pursuant to Municipal Home Rule Law Section 24. Whereas Municipal Home Rule Law Section 24 provides in part, no such local law shall be passed until it shall have been in its final form in either A, upon the desks or tables of the members at least 7 calendar days exclusive of Sunday prior to its final passage, or B, mailed to each of them in postpaid, appropriately addressed and securely closed envelopes or wrappers in a post box or post office of the United States Post Office Department within the local government at least 10 calendar days exclusive of Sunday prior to its passage. And whereas the aforementioned sections of the Municipal Home Rule Law also allows for emailing of the local law in final form in PDF to the email address of the members at least 10 calendar days exclusive of Sunday prior to the final passage, where the following conditions are met. A, the local government has documented that each member of the legislative body has an email address. B, the local government has published such email address on the bulletin board of the local government clerk. And C, the legislative body has unanimously adopted a resolution authorizing such electronic delivery. And whereas the mayor and village trustees each have a villageofossining.org email address, and whereas the village email address of the mayor and village trustees are on the village website, and such email addresses are also available in the office of the village clerk, and whereas the board of trustees determines that it is appropriate to formally allow for the emailing of proposed local laws in final form to the mayor and trustees as provided in Municipal Home Rule Section 24, now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to Municipal Home Rule Section 24 of the Village of Ossining, Board of Trustees authorizes the final version of the proposed local laws may be emailed to the village email addresses of the mayor and trustees at least 10 calendar days exclusive of Sunday prior to final passage. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I think this is great. Thank you, Stuart. Do you want to comment on anything? Because we didn't get to, this is a little bit of a late addition. So do you want to give us a little more background?
It is basically to meet what we basically do now, which is to email you the local laws rather than putting them into your mailboxes. The technical term is that the final version must be laid on your desk, but since you don't actually have a desk, this is the simpler way to do it. It does require a resolution to adopt it. It has to be a unanimously adopted resolution, but this way we can get it to you in final form at least 10 calendar days before there is a vote. Unless the mayor issues a certificate of necessity. But otherwise, this is basically, I think, the way to go. And we sort of do belt and suspenders by having this resolution, allowing it to go by PDF.
Excellent. Anybody else with any questions or comments before we vote?
No.
Madam Clerk. Well, does this need to be a roll call vote because it needs to be unanimous?
As a roll call, since it has to be unanimous. Thank you,
Okay.
Mayor.
Yes, okay. Trustee Lopez?
Aye.
Trustee Levin?
Aye.
Trustee Quesada?
Aye.
Trustee Fritchie?
Aye.
Mayor Garrity?
Aye.
Thank you.
And moving on to authorizing the Corporation Counsel to commence a legal action against Danny F. Sarango Yahuge for damages to village-owned property arising out of a motor vehicle accident on August 4, 2020. Whereas Section C310 of the Charter of the Village of Ossining provides in part it shall be the duty of the Corporation Counsel or his or her designee to appear for and prosecute and defend all suits, actions, or legal proceedings of any kind brought by or against the village. And whereas the Charter further provides the Corporation Counsel shall have no power or authority to settle, discontinue, or compromise any pending suit, action, or legal proceedings without first being authorized to do so by the Board of Trustees. And whereas on August 1st, 2020, Danny F. Sarango Young at 20 Pine Avenue, Ossining, New York, was operating a vehicle registered in his name, a 2010 Nissan Connecticut registration AJ24909, proceeding northbound on South Highland Avenue at the intersection with Hamilton Place. And whereas on August 1st, 2020, Ossining Police Officer Juan Encarnacion was operating a village-owned police vehicle, a 2019 Dodge New York license DB4004, and was proceeding westbound on Hamilton Place toward the intersection with South Highland Avenue. And whereas as the village-owned vehicle approached the aforementioned intersection, Police Officer Encarnacion activated the vehicle's lights and sirens and then proceeded into the intersection. And whereas Danny F. Sarango Yahu proceeded in the intersection, colliding with the police vehicle operated by Police Officer Encarnacion. And whereas the collision damaged the village-owned vehicle, rendering the vehicle a total loss. Now therefore be it resolved that the Corporation Counsel is authorized to commence a legal action against Danny F. Sarango Yanghe and other necessary parties to recover from the property damages sustained by the village as a result of the August 4th, 2020 motor vehicle accident involving the 2019 village-owned police vehicle VIN IC4RDJFG8KC8275909. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Sorry.
Comments on the board? Comments from staff? No?
Mayor, just so the board is aware, the cost of the vehicle was just over $51,000. And as noted, it was declared a total loss. I do have communication out to the other driver's insurance company. I've not heard back, but this would at least preserve the village's right to pursue an action against the driver to recover for that property damage loss.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Is there anybody here that would like to address the board on anything tonight?
So this is an opportunity for folks to speak to us about anything of relevance to the greater good of the community. Mr. Stone, your hand is up. Did you want to comment generally, or is that just left up from earlier? If it's left up from earlier, then I will make it possible for you to talk if you wanted to. Otherwise, I will just wait a moment and see if anybody else raises their hand. Okay. Okay. I believe we have a motion to adjourn to executive session 4.
Matters of personnel regarding specific persons and corporations, Mayor.
Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And with that, I say thank you very much for joining us for this week's legislative session. This meeting is adjourned to executive session.